We all know AI is technically impressive, but what about simple AI? Which one's more useful? Hi, my name's David from 158 Lab, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the difference between technically impressive AI and useful. What is more useful? Something that is technically impressive, but only works 80% of the time, or something simple that works all of the time? So if we think of it as like a spectrum, on one end, you've got high reasoning, highly autonomous agents that can take any scenario with a set of guidelines and a system prompt and data and information baked into it, that it can resolve a lot of questions, queries, or even problems based on that. That's on the technically impressive side. And on the other side, we've got very simple. And at the very end of that simple is essentially no reasoning at all, which could be some form of automation, or just decisions to sort of say what tool to use at what time or what automation to use at what time. But within those automations are predefined workflows, predefined inputs and predefined outputs based on decision making. So a lot of that could be handled by just simple coding with if-when statements and those type of things. So when we take the two of these things and we look at that spectrum, where does useful start and where does useful stop? And I think in today's day and age, we are really looking at the potential of fully autonomous and fully able to do a whole lot of reasoning. The potential is there. The issue is the reliability, the accountability, and its ability to do it consistently, which is the problem. So let's take an example with, say, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia. We mentioned it in one of our first videos. If not, I'll link it in the description down below. You can go take a look. We talked about the fact that they went to go and automate through a call center or replace 45 call center roles with AI voice agents. Now, don't get me wrong. I love AI voice agent technology. For me personally, Maya, who is my corporate AI partner, who's also AI, started off as a voice agent. I simply love the technology. However, how it's placed is going to be really important. So the Commonwealth Bank of Australia went to go and replicate or reproduce what a human call center operator could do with an AI voice agent. Now, I'm not close to this whole thing. I've only seen it through what has been disclosed, through articles, etc. But from what I've read, from what I've seen, they found someone who could create these AI voice agents and deployed them into a call center, and I'm assuming with some heavy battle testing prior to that. Enough so where they're like, okay, look, we think it's going to work, and they'll be assisted by human call center operators if things don't go right. Now, what they found is when they deployed it, that instead of it going the way they expected, which was the AI agents were able to cope with a higher amount of calls, with a higher amount of accuracy, etc., they found that there was a lot more issues coming out of it that required actually more work by the human operators to kind of fix the issues that was bigger than if they had just left it as it was with just human operators. And to their credit, they gave it a go. And when it didn't work, they pivoted, they wound it back. They announced they're going to spend $90 million in making their workforce AI ready. Now, I can only imagine having a complete call center based on voice agents that are taking calls constantly, having huge bandwidth, would be an incredible customer experience if it was accurate, if it was reliable, and if it was consistent. We're not there yet. How far away? I'm not sure. But it also begs the other question, should we be there? Now let's think of a simpler solution. I've worked in call centers for a large part of my life, so I can kind of understand there's a big gap between the actual conversation going on and the length of the call. If you could imagine bringing down the length of the call to be as close as the actual time that the consumer is giving you information and you as a product or service representative, giving them information. If you could close the call gap to just the talking, then suddenly the efficiencies are through the roof. No hold times, no checking, no blank space as you're looking something up or checking something. It's all of that in-between stuff that creates a big increase in the call time, and therefore how effective or how productive you are as a single operator, therefore how many calls that you're going to get in, how many calls you can take, and again, the customer experience because of wait times. Now imagine augmenting AI into the process, it not taking it over, but imagine a process where the AI agent is transcribing in real time to the operator what the customer said, what the operator's saying, and based on that, reasoning what policies, procedures, products, or anything that's relevant, bring it to the forefront for the agent in simple, clickable results. So there's less looking, less worrying, suggesting, and all of that. And then think about downstream, how that could be really effective in quality assurance when it comes to going over the calls, looking at the trends, looking at what are the big issues that seem to be discussed. What are the products that need more work on, that need more help with, and the products that just seem to sell themselves. So this is where I think it's going to be really, really capable, as opposed to the full taking over. And another example I'd like to talk about is Salesforce. So last year they went and cut their headcount, I believe, from about 9,000 to about 5,000. And that was based on, in some part, I'm not saying the whole bit, in some part to the fact that they were very confident on what AI could do at that time and as it was going to progress. Turns out that while some people say that they regretted doing it, some people sort of say it's just a misquote. But there's a number of articles online that do talk about the fact that they are not as confident in the capabilities of fully autonomous agent reasoning when it comes to workflows. And I believe in part of that, it was the fact that if you give an agent 8 things to do, say, after an interaction with a client, it may miss or skip a few. And then you have to have quality assurance baked in to see if that's being done, such as quality customer surveys, things like that. So what's their solution? Well, they're going back to automation. So where you've got a action that requires, say, 8 steps that needs to happen, predefined input and predefined output based on a number of sort of selections, which is easy to be, like, it doesn't need reasoning. It simply goes in, this needs to happen, then this, then this, then this, then this. And maybe with a few sort of tips or some different custom coding that says if, then that. So it comes down to what is useful: simple, unsexy AI, or technically impressive. Now, I love showing off technically impressive. I love experiencing technically impressive. And I love it that when in an environment, you can get an AI agent to do something and it does something which is technically impressive. Getting it doing it constantly is going to be the challenge. And when it doesn't go right, who's accountable? Because with humans in the loop, there's always accountability. If it's complete agent autonomous, the accountability then has to run upstream, which can create problems. So when you're thinking about deploying AI in your business, it's going to be less about how can I be impressive in AI. It's how can I use AI in simple ways that can be useful. It's very important that whenever you do anything, the first thing you have to ask yourself, number 1, does it work? Number 2, is it useful? And then number 3, can it be improved on? And so think of it that way. And when I come to deploying AI, it's about conscious co-creation with AI in the fact that it's deliberate, conscious as in deliberate. And so thinking about your processes, what's some of the processes that you have that require a lot of if, then, that? Number 1, can it be automated? And if it can be automated, go down that route. Now, if you needed that automation that also has a bit more reasoning involved, then you can build on top of that. And then as you take these layers on, and as the LLMs get a lot better at tool calling, better at context window accuracy, not just how big the context window is, but how much they can actually digest and understand concurrently, then we can add the more technically impressive, and technically impressive. Because ultimately, something that's technically impressive that only works 8 out of 10 times is not going to be rolled out. Because ultimately, something that is simple and useful, which works 10 out of 10 times, will always trump something that has a 20% failure rate. Now, I can talk a lot more in detail about some of these things and even show you more about what I'm doing. Hit me up in the comments. What are some of the challenges that you've got? What are some of the things you'd like me to talk about? And I'll catch you in the next video.